No reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome to On the Money, where we're focused on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you beat the squeeze. I'm Liam Halligan, and for the next hour, we'll be talking about looming strike action affecting the post office, pharmaceuticals, and perhaps the rail industry. The RMT rail union's balloting members on what it's calling the biggest rail strike in British history. Will it happen? We'll be asking those in the know. Plus, Netflix is losing subscribers. Is it because the Screaming Giants programmes have become too woke? All that and much more on The Money after the GB News headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
Thank you, Liam. It's 1 minute past 1. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. MPs are still debating in the Commons as we speak, in fact, whether or not there should be an investigation into claims the Prime Minister misled Parliament about lockdown parties. It's after the government withdrew its request to delay the vote. Conservative MPs now have a free vote on the motion after the government's request to delay it was pulled. MPs will vote later this afternoon. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says Labour are playing political games.
Because I think there are so many investigations going on at the moment. The Sugaray report hasn't been published. The police haven't finished their investigations. And I think, dragging this into what is currently a sort of political Punch and Judy match by Keir Starmer doesn't actually get to the bottom of it. So let's get the Sugaray report, police investigation finished. And then as the government's amendment is put before the House today, it doesn't rule it out. It just says let's wait till it's completed.
And on a key day in the Commons, Boris Johnson's not there. He's instead in India on a 2-day visit to strengthen ties with the country. The Prime Minister says he hopes a free trade agreement can be reached as soon as this autumn. He'll hold talks with his counterpart, Narendra Modi, tomorrow. The Foreign Secretary has announced a wave of new sanctions against Russia. Liz Truss says it'll affect those with Ukrainian blood on their hands. This morning, Russian military abandoned plans to storm a steel plant in Mariupol, where Ukrainian troops are holding out. President Vladimir Putin instead ordered the plant to be sealed off. It's amid warnings the besieged port city could fall to Moscow today. Staying with Ukraine, a military think tank says Russia failed to make any major breakthroughs in its offensive in the eastern regions yesterday. The Institute for the Study of War said Moscow only secured minor gains, including parts of some frontline towns. The Ministry of Defence, meanwhile, warns the Kremlin could be stepping up its offensive ahead of their 9th of May Victory Day celebrations. But Ukraine's military spokesman said troops managed to stop a number of Russian attacks overnight.
In the Donetsk and Tavria directions, the enemy continues to carry out artillery shelling along the entire line of contact. In the Kherson region, the invaders plan to organise the forced mobilisation of the population for war with Ukraine. At the same time, the occupiers set a goal to completely stop the humanitarian support of the region from the Ukrainian authorities.
In France, President Emmanuel Macron and his opponent Marine Le Pen faced each other last night in their only pre-election debate. Mr. Macron accused the far-right leader of a desire to pull France out of the EU. Ms. Le Pen responded, defending her stance on religion and pledging to improve French people's finances. Voters will take to the polls this Sunday. The Children's Commissioner says smacking should be banned in England. Dame Rachel de Souza wants the law changed to ensure children and adults share the same protection from assault. Education Secretary Nadhim Zahawi disagrees. She says parents are entitled to discipline their kids. The change would bring the law in line with Scotland and Wales. Northern Ireland is also yet to ban smacking. Chair of the Education Select Committee, Robert Halfon, told GB News it's a topic that must be debated properly.
A child puts his hand on a fire and you automatically smack that child's arm even lightly, would that come under a ban? So this is not an easy issue to pass legislation on. But as I say, if I'm not allowed to smack adults or animals, why should we then say, well, it's okay to smack defenceless children?
A healthcare worker caught COVID-19 twice in the space of 20 days. It's believed to be the shortest gap between infections since the pandemic began. The 31-year-old woman from Spain became infected with the Delta variant, followed by the Omicron strain in under 3 weeks. Researchers say the case shows that even if you've had COVID before and are fully vaccinated, you can't assume you're protected against reinfection. And to mark the Queen's 96th birthday today, a 41-gun salute in Hyde Park in London to honour the occasion. Her Majesty's chosen not to be in the capital. She's instead spending the day at Sandringham in a cottage loved by her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh. And a new photo's been released to celebrate the Queen's 96th birthday, taken last month in the grounds of Windsor Castle. Her Majesty's pictured with 2 of her white fell ponies. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now back to Liam and On the Money.
And coming up on the money today, the RMT rail union's balloting members on what it's saying could be the biggest rail strike in British history over pay and claims that Network Rail's compromising rail safety, claims the rail operator denies. Will the strike happen? Should it happen? We host a detailed discussion. Plus, Netflix has just seen the first ever fall in its subscriber numbers. The streaming giant's also losing cash because so many viewers watch shows using someone else's password. What future for this iconic media brand? Plus, each day On the Money features an in-depth Money Talks interview with a business leader or policymaker. Today, we're talking to a beauty industry trailblazer for whom redundancy was the spur that caused her to start her business. For years, Chandela has juggled being a mum with nurturing her business, and all without taking a day of maternity leave. How does she do it? We'll be finding out later in the show. And as ever, I want your questions, opinions, ideas. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On the Money? How do they impact you? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. And stay with us, because this is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and you're On the Money. The National Union of Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers, the RMT, is to ballot more than 40,000 workers at Network Rail and train operating companies across the UK in a dispute over jobs and pay. The Rail Workers Union has said the vote could trigger the biggest rail strike in modern history. The RMT says Network Rail plans to lay off up to 2,500 maintenance jobs as part of a £2 billion spending reduction, which the union claims would make accidents more likely. Network Rail denies that and says it's disappointed, urging the RMT to instead work with us, not against us. Rail passenger numbers are still lagging pre-pandemic levels, with many commuters working from home at least part of the time. So ticket sales and passenger revenues are down, meaning there's less money for the railway. Tim Shoveler, Network Rail's regional director, says we cannot keep relying on government handouts, so we must work together with train operators and our trade unions to save millions of pounds and deliver a more efficient railway. Now, On the Money's long predicted increased industrial unrest across the UK. As well as this RMT ballot, the Communication Workers Union has just announced post office workers will stage a one-day strike on the 3rd of May in response to what it calls an exceptionally poor 2% pay rise. GlaxoSmithKline also faces industrial action for the first time after workers voted to strike, giving the pharmaceutical giant just 48 hours to improve on its 4% pay offer. As I've said before, the UK could soon be experiencing the kind of widespread industrial action we saw in the late 70s. Back then, as now, high inflation caused real wages to fall as earnings lagged behind price rises. Many trade unions took strike action in response. The immediate question for now, though, is what the RMT will do and what it should do if and when its members do vote to strike. And that's our On the Money question today. Would a national rail strike be justified? Grown-up conversations with people who really know their stuff here on The Money as ever. And today we are talking to Eddie Dempsey, Senior Assistant General Secretary at the RMT. Eddie, thank you very much for joining us here on The Money. We also have an employment lawyer, at Howard Kennedy Lawyers. That's James Townsend, returning to the show. Great to have you with us. And in the studio, another friend of the show, Louise Oliver, a chartered financial advisor at Pearsfield Oliver. Great to have you with us too, Louise. Let's turn to you first, Eddie. Can you let us know what the timetable is for this ballot, the timetable for possible strike action if it happens, and what you feel is really at stake here for your members and our rail network?
Hi, Liam. So this dispute's been a long time sort of in the making. We've been through the pandemic period where our members made lots of changes to their working practices and worked heroically through the pandemic to keep the country moving. Many of our members have had pay freezes now. Some of them are in the third year of a pay freeze. We've changed how we've worked. We've made lots of sacrifices to help the railway keep going. And we've been working with the industry and the Rail Industry Recovery Group, putting forward ideas on how to help the industry recover. But that's turned into a forum where we're told now the intention is to strip $2 billion out of the rail industry to make that money come out through stripping out jobs and attacking terms and conditions and keeping wages low. And we've had the biggest fall in real living standards now since records began. Wages have been declining in real terms for 30 years. And our members, frankly, have had enough. And although it's been referred to as a national strike, I have to point out this is mainly Network Rail and the train operating companies that are associated with control from the DfT. We don't have this in Wales, where we've had a settlement because there was a different political decision taken there. We don't have this in other parts of the country where we've achieved pay awards. It's primarily the companies associated with the Rail Industry Recovery Group. So we've put forward lots of ideas on how they can save money. We've told them many ways they could make efficiency savings, but they're intent on making those efficiency savings in removing safety critical jobs, in slashing maintenance standards and safety schedules, and in keeping wages down and tearing up terms and conditions for railway workers.
Thanks for making the qualification about other parts of the country, Eddie. That's appreciated. The union has said that you believe removing maintenance jobs, 2,500, you say, is safety critical. Have you put that to Network Rail? And as and when you did, what did they say about that specific safety aspect?
So we've put forward a number of proposals to Network Rail, including how they could carry out their maintenance work more efficiently by bringing work that's currently contracted out in-house and done by people that have already got other duties to do. So that's productivity, and it would save millions and millions of pounds, up to £212 million if we look at renewals. We've given them options for cutting bonuses within the company that we don't think need to be there. And that's across the board for frontline workers as well as people more senior. We've pointed out that director pay is out of control in Network Rail. 70 of the most highest paid civil servants in the country are Network Rail employees. If you strip their money back just to what the Prime Minister's being paid, you'd save nearly £6 million a year. I'll give you an example. They've got 8 non-executive directors. They spent nearly £750,000 for those people to attend 8 meetings over 1 year during a pandemic. Those meetings would have been like this on Zoom or on Teams or whatever. And it's profligate and it doesn't need to happen. So we've demonstrated many ways they could save money and improve service. But they're intent on cutting maintenance standards and stripping out frontline safety critical jobs. We think that's dangerous for 2 reasons. We're going through a massive change in technological advancement in rail, in digital terms and in what we call intelligent infrastructure. The railway's changing rapidly. So we're embedding all of this new technology, and at the same time, we're trying to do a complete reorganisation and strip out thousands of frontline jobs and cut back on maintenance work. It's like trying to perform an operation on yourself whilst riding a bike. It doesn't make sense. And we think all of these things combined are a worry. We're not saying all of their plans are dangerous. We do think that some of the types of new infrastructure and new assets that are coming in could reasonably mean you've got to maintain them less. That's true. But in the whole, we think this is driven by cost. They've told us it's driven by cost. They've told us this is the number we've been tasked with cutting out. And so all of our plans are geared towards that. So it's kind of putting the horse before the cart.
And Eddie Dempsey of the RMT, just briefly, because I want to bring the other guests in, but I do want to ask you this. The RMT, you'll be weighing your words carefully in your press releases and so on. The biggest rail strike in history. What does that mean? What could we be looking at here if your 40,000 member ballot goes for strike action?
So just to be clear, what we're saying is that our members want a pay rise, and they're resolute. They want a pay rise. Some of them are in the third year of a pay freeze. We want a guarantee of no compulsory redundancies. We're not saying we're opposed to change in general, but we're saying that we want to do it in a controlled way. And we're saying that we want no imposed detrimental changes to how we work. We want to negotiate and agree how that's done. We've also got concerns about our pensions more broadly, and we're worried about that too. But the reason we're saying this could be the biggest strike in history is because of the strength of feeling and the appetite from our members to go into dispute. We've been very patient. Our members have been very, very patient. You've got to appreciate none of our members wanted to get into any kind of serious industrial action during a pandemic. We're absolutely committed to delivering key workers to the health service, to the care homes and where they needed to be. And now we feel that after all the clapping and all the praise we got during that period, we're just simply seen as a cost that has to be stripped out. So we're not asking for the world on a plate. We're just simply saying people need to see their wages rise with inflation going in the direction it's going. They need to control and have a say in how changes are happening. And we want the industry side to take seriously some of the proposals we've put forward to make efficiencies and to make savings for the rail industry as a whole.
Well, Eddie Dempsey, thank you for joining us. We will carry on this important discussion after the break, but we'll say goodbye to you there, Eddie Dempsey, Senior Assistant General Secretary at the RMT, as the union looks to ballot its members, possibly sparking the biggest strike in rail history. That's what we're being told. So this discussion will carry on after the break, so stay with us. You're on the money.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, but to the point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. It's 1:20. Well, the RMT Rail Union is balloting members on what it's calling potentially the biggest rail strike in British history. We're asking, if it goes ahead, is it justified? We just heard from the RMT. Let's now bring in employment lawyer from Howard Kennedy, James Townsend. James, employment law, trade union law is very different from the 70s. I talked about the 70s at the top of the show, but that doesn't mean that there can't be widespread strikes in this country.
Well, yeah, people are entitled to strike. What the RMT now need to do is they need to ballot all of their members, 40,000 of them. They'll need a 50% turnout and they'll need 40% support. The government's already been very quick to condemn this. Listen very carefully to what Eddie was saying before the break. I mean, ultimately, he's explained this isn't fully about health and safety issues, is it? It's about pensions, it's about cost of living, it's about salaries, it's about much wider issues here. And there's not going to be a lot of support amongst commuters for this. We can understand their position, but it seems like quite an early stage to be talking about balloting for strike action. There hasn't been a collective process. So far, there have been opportunities for people to, take applications for voluntary redundancy if they so wished. And ultimately, with 15 billion having been pumped into the railways to keep them going during the pandemic, cuts need to be made. So it'll be interesting to see what support the membership have, whether strike action actually does take place, and what the reactions are going to be from members of the public.
Exactly so. And on that point, James, it's a pleasure now to bring in Luca Barbarossa. Luca's an actor who relies on trains from Crowbridge to London for work, often very time sensitive. Luca, thanks so much for joining us here on GB News. We just heard from the RMT union. If they were to strike, if they were to impose the biggest rail strike in British history, would they have your sympathy?
Absolutely not. Obviously, I live in Crowborough, which is in East Sussex. And also to get into work into London, they've cut our train service every 2 hours, which I think is absolutely disgraceful, because I wrote to my MP, I spoke to her, I basically said, people rely on this service, it's a rural service, we need it to get into London. I think it's absolutely disgusting that they're trying to strike again, because obviously we've lost out, prior with COVID and the pandemic.
So you don't buy their notion that it's partly about wanting to uphold safety standards. Eddie Dempsey said it was partly about their own work conditions and pensions and pay and so on. But you think that's all it's about?
Well, I think because our line is a branch line, so it's quite rural, so they could never have driverless trains, because obviously they'd always have to have a conductor. So I don't see what it could all be about, if that makes sense. Obviously, they've cut quite a lot of staff due to COVID and the pandemic. But I don't understand why they're striking now, because they're always sort of recruiting more staff. So I don't understand why they've started a strike now.
Let's bring you in now, Louise. What do you make of this? Do you think if the RMT do impose this strike action, if their members vote for it, do you think they'll take the public with them? Do you think there'll be public sympathy?
Oh, Liam, I think it'll be really mixed. I do have sympathy with the rail workers, but in this country, and in any country, we need decent infrastructure. We need it to be safe. We need it to connect our businesses throughout the UK. So it needs support, and what that has lacked through the pandemic is support. People are working from home. Therefore, there isn't the demand for the rail. Therefore, they're looking at cutting their costs. It's really difficult. So the message of people going back to the office, supporting public transport, has to be up there. But I do think, tip of the iceberg, we'll see this with other businesses. And
you mean more industrial action, more disputes over pay?
Well, not necessarily that, but redundancies.
Yeah.
And this was one to watch, because we talked about this with the potential for stagflation. And the government is really proud of its low unemployment figures. And we could see that start to tick up, and there is the worry. And next week, people will feel, employers and employees, those NIC increases in their wage packets.
National insurance contribution increases, and you mentioned there the S word, which we often talk about here on The Money, stagflation, that combination of high price rises, inflation and economic slowdown,
low growth,
stagnation, as we had in the 1970s. Let's go back to James Townsend at Howard Kennedy. James, I'm old enough to remember the 70s, and I remember widespread industrial action in the 70s sparked a whole raft of laws limiting trade union power during the 1980s. We're not there yet, are we? But could we be?
I don't know of any plans to amend the piece of legislation that relates to the ability to bring action. But, you know, there are rules around bringing action, and those rules would have to be adhered to for there to be a relevant strike action, for it to be authorised, and for workers to get protection against, say, unfair dismissal and that sort of thing. So the bar's reasonably high. As I mentioned before, there has to be a 50% turnout of all eligible voters, and 40% have to support the action. Look, if workers want to go ahead and strike, then they can. It's very disruptive. There won't be necessarily a lot of support for these people doing this amongst commuters, but there we have it. I don't think there's any suggestion of reform at the moment.
And let's give the last word to Luca, a commuter, somebody who comes in from Crowborough in East Sussex. Luca, you wouldn't support strike action. You think it's unfair. So what is your message to Eddie Dempsey of the RMT, who joined us at the top of the show?
My message to him is basically, you know, you're going to wreck people's lives. You know, I obviously have to rely on that train service to get to London. It's, you know, it's really rural, and you need to have a look, you know, at the figures, because it's not very reliable as it is at the moment. And also 2 hours a day is absolutely ridiculous. Loads of people have wrote to our local MP, and we've had no response whatsoever. So yeah, I think it's absolutely disgusting that they want to strike. And, you know, when are they going to put the train service back to every hour in the day?
Well, Luca Barbarossa, thanks a lot for joining us. Be good to get you back on the show as and when this strike action happens. And also James Townsend of Howard Kennedy Lawyers. And Louise, you're going to stay with us. Louise Oliver here in the studio. Another meaty discussion there. And we will, of course, keep an eye on that possible strike action and bring news of it to you. Now, moving on, shares in Netflix are down more than 30% after the streaming giant reported a growth slowdown and, for the first time, a drop in subscriber numbers. Netflix lost over 200,000 subscribers over the last 3 months, and the company expects to shed another 2 million by June. They're also losing billions of pounds each year because many of us watch shows for free using a friend's password. And in some quarters, Netflix has become a byword for liberal excess. Tesla founder Elon Musk has just tweeted that, in his view, the streaming giant's suffering from a woke mind virus that makes its shows unwatchable. Having said all that, Netflix still does have around 220 million subscribers worldwide and made $1.6 billion in net profit last year. So, joining me to discuss the streaming giant is Alice Enders of Enders Analysis Media Consultancy. Alice, great to have you on the show. I mean, Netflix, they're hardly heading for the poorhouse, are they? And in the end, wasn't it inevitable that at some stage their subscriber numbers would peak?
Well, I think the idea is that this is the result of unforeseen events, the first of which is, of course, Russia's war in Ukraine, which caused the current quarter's results to be disappointing. It would have gained 500,000 subscribers had it not suspended services in Russia. And then I think, as you mentioned, the projection that they will lose 2 million subscribers in this quarter is very eye-popping. Bearing in mind that Netflix has expanded to many developing countries, which have been hit very, very hard by the cost of living crisis that is just beginning to be very palpable here, too, in terms of subscriptions, as we've already seen. The world is a big place, and Netflix has a lot of traction. It claims there's 100 million households out there that are watching its service for free. So presumably there could be quite a few more subscribers for Netflix in the pipeline. But I personally think the cost of living crisis is really beginning to hit home.
Alice, the streaming giants, not least Netflix, they've been spending really big on glossy, multi-million-dollar productions. Of course, that's upending media rivals elsewhere as they struggle to catch up. But an analyst who I respect said to me the other day that the thing about Netflix, it's spending lots of money, but it's spending as if it had 1 billion subscribers rather than less than 250 million subscribers. Do you think they're overspending?
I don't think their results support that assessment. They had a very healthy profit in terms of percentage of revenues. Inevitably, you're talking about expenditure which is spread across, as you said, 220 million subscribers, which is a huge number. And if you think of the expansion that could take place for Netflix, that kind of expenditure level appears justified to me. It also licenses an enormous amount of content. I mean, lots of BBC, Channel 4, etc. content is available on Netflix. So it's the catalog isn't just about those eye-catching big new productions, Stranger Things, and that kind of thing.
What do you make of this, Louise, as a business analyst yourself, but also as a punter, as somebody who sits on their sofa from time to time for a night in with the telly? What do you think of their output? What do you think of Elon Musk saying they caught some kind of woke virus? Do you think that's turning people off?
Well, I don't know about that. I certainly don't feel sorry for Netflix. I agree with Alice. I think that this energy crisis, it has affected it. People are looking at discretionary expenditure and essential, and it's a discretionary. Yeah. And also, we've got lighter evenings, the sun's shining. Maybe I don't want to sit and watch the telly quite so much. What are Netflix doing about it? They're chasing those subscribers who are sharing their passwords. I was at the train station this morning, and I asked a chap about Netflix, and he was from America, and he said he's got 4 people sharing his password. I don't think those 4 people will become subscribers. I think Netflix have got it wrong there. They're sharing the password for a reason. Maybe they can't afford it to pay anyway. The other thing that Netflix are looking at doing, of course, is to come up with a lower cost version, because they've sat on their laurels. They've got Amazon, Apple, competing, Disney, with their services at lower costs. So those profits that Alice referred to, maybe they should use some of those to reduce the cost of their services rather than chasing those people that were never going to be subscribers in the first place. But it is that people are walking because they're being very sensible, thinking, I need to save money. What can we lose? We can lose Netflix and go to a cheaper provider.
Alice, I just wanted to ask you if there is a way that Netflix can stop people sharing passwords. Can there be some kind of face recognition, voice recognition, some kind of use of fingerprint security on your laptop or something to make sure that only certain people who are buying the account are using the account rather than lending out or even renting out their password to their neighbours?
Well, I haven't heard of people renting out their passwords, but the fact is that on certain Netflix packages, the premium ones, it's perfectly okay to share your password with people who live in your household and to use multiple devices and so on. I think the challenge of piracy is very intense. It's been around for a long time. Netflix has been aware of this for many years, or at least it should be. But the fact that it's really sort of pinpointing this as a major drag on subscriber growth is new. There is technology, but it is not easy to really clamp down on password piracy. And I don't think it's ever has been for any service, to be honest. This is a problem that's shared all across the board for OTT subscription services. And this may be also the argument for advertising supported service, because of course the advertising pays for the service. If
Alice Enders, I'm afraid we've got to leave it there. You are Alice Enders of Enders Analysis Media Consultancy. I'm sorry we've got to wrap. It's a really interesting discussion. Thanks also, of course, Louise Oliver, Chartered Financial Advisor at Piercefield. Oliver, great to have you with us. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up, today's Money Talks interview is with beauty entrepreneur Sean Della. We'll be talking about balancing business with motherhood and why she's not taken a single day of maternity leave, despite having 4 kids. All that after the GB News headlines with Rhiannon Jones.
Thank you, Liam. It's 1:35. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. MPs are still debating in the Commons whether or not there should be an investigation into claims the Prime Minister misled Parliament about lockdown parties. It's after the government withdrew its request to delay the vote. Conservative MPs now have a free vote on the motion after the government's request to delay it was pulled. MPs will vote later this afternoon. And on a key day in the Commons, Boris Johnson's not there. He's in India on a trade visit to strengthen ties with the country. The Prime Minister says he hopes a free trade agreement can be reached by the autumn. He'll hold talks with his counterpart, Narendra Modi, tomorrow. The Foreign Secretary's announced a wave of new sanctions against Russia. Liz Truss says it'll affect those with Ukrainian blood on their hands. This morning, the Russian military abandoned plans to storm a steel plant in Mariupol, where Ukrainian troops are holding out. President Putin's instead says it'll be securely blockaded. It's amid warnings the besieged port city could fall to Moscow today. And to mark the Queen's 96th birthday today, a 41-gun salute in Hyde Park in London to honour the occasion. Her Majesty's not in the capital, choosing instead to spend the day in Sandringham in a cottage loved by her late husband, the Duke of Edinburgh. And a new photo's also been released to celebrate the Queen's 96th birthday, taken last month in the grounds of Windsor Castle. Her Majesty's pictured with 2 of her white fell ponies. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. It's back to Liam and On the Money in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Mostly dry on Thursday, plenty of sunshine, but the breeze increasing over the next 24 hours or so. The reason for the settled weather at the moment, low pressure to the south of the UK, high pressure to the north, an easterly flow developing, drawing in quite a lot of dry air at the moment, but we will see changes as we move into the weekend. For Thursday afternoon, plenty of sunshine across the whole of the UK. It will be hazy at times. The easterly breeze just starting to pick up, so noticeable along some eastern coasts. Perhaps some low cloud mist and murk holding on across some eastern coast of northeast England here too. Temperatures pegged back 11, 12, 13 degrees. But come further west, temperatures rising 19, 20 Celsius possible, well above average for the time of year. Moderate UV levels too. Through the evening time, some mist and fog starts to develop in 1 or 2 spots. Low cloud moving back in off the North Sea down the east coast here, so turning murky as the night goes on. That easterly wind also starting to pick up, becoming noticeable by the end of the night. Temperatures generally into mid-single figures. Towns and cities holding up well above freezing. So a fresh start to Friday morning. A dry, bright start for many, though low cloud across some eastern areas. The southeast seeing some thicker cloud. This pushing its way westwards through the morning into the afternoon. It should break Up. However, we will see showers develop here too. One or two of these could be heavy as they move into the West Country, though the Midlands northwards, plenty more sunshine to come. Some low cloud around the coast, keeping it cooler across northeast Scotland, eastern England, but elsewhere temperatures again high teens, well above average. Through the evening we should start to see the showers fade away across southwest England. Elsewhere generally dry, though notice again some low cloud moving in off the North Sea later on, and that will set us up for the weekend itself. Cloudy for many, the risk of a few showers, the best of the sunshine in the east where we'll see the highest temperatures.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And welcome back. It's 1:41. You're on the money. Now, Uniqlo operates in 25 countries across the world. It's one of the biggest clothing brands on earth, and today it opens the doors on a vast new store on Regent Street in central London. This holds special significance for Uniqlo, as Regent Street was where the first store the brand opened outside of Japan. That happened 20 years ago. And I'm delighted to welcome John C.J. He's Global Head of Creative at Uniqlo, and he's at that brand new Regent Street store now. John J., I thought the high street was meant to be dying.
Oh, no. You know, you mentioned we opened in this country in London 20 years ago. And what's so interesting for us is that in the beginning, we failed in London, but we kept coming back and we kept getting better. And what we see now, it's more than high street. It's really the city of London that we are so excited about. We see the pockets of innovation, we see the rising neighborhoods, and fueled by a new generation of creators. We see London as one of the most creative cities in the world, and we have great confidence here.
What brought you to Regent Street? It's such an iconic street for those who know central London well. Did you consider other parts of the capital, or were you always going to go back to Regent Street?
Well, as you know, we have another store, a flagship store on Oxford Street, but we wanted to stay in the center. We feel that we are, by being in the center, we can reach out to the other neighborhoods as well. We are doing a lot of work in the different communities. We're doing a lot of great relationships to small entrepreneurs in the city. So being in the center on Regent Street, and in this building in particular, which is over 100 years old as a retailer, is a special treat for us. It's an honor to be here.
And what's your view on the high street in general, John Jay. Obviously, let's be clear, Regent Street, Oxford Street, these are very, very exceptional retail meccas. People come from all over the world. But I'm sure you've thought long and hard about the future of the high street, the extent to which you market yourselves online, in physical stores, clicks versus bricks, if you like. Do you think the high street is now on a long-term decline, or do you think it will revitalise itself, having been hammered not just by the surge of e-retailing, if you like, but also globally, the pandemic?
Well, we very much believe in brick and mortar, but of course, e-commerce is a great growth engine for us around the world. But we are about personal experiences. And for those who have been working from home, like myself, what a great joy it's been to come back and really work with my mates and work with my teammates, around in the office. So we feel stores, that personal experience, this store, we've really worked hard at making the experience really comfortable. So in the sense that by having brick and mortar stores, it's really our home. It's really where we can show you ourselves at our best, where we can show the brand at our best. Clearly, the relationship to e-commerce is important. And clearly, there are stores that are failing, brands that are failing. But I think, there's always room for innovation, always room for people who are devoted to the local culture.
And John, let's hear from the salesman in you. What's your minute-long pitch of why people should visit your store on Oxford Street, Regent Street, maybe making it part of a shopping trip to London if they're coming in from elsewhere? What is it that your brand can offer? What is it that it represents for shoppers?
Well, we'd like to think that when we work very hard at offering the greatest quality at the most affordable prices. I mean, that is the foundation of what we do. So, when people ask us about sustainability and how much of a part of that is in our marketing, it is not just part of our marketing, it is everything that we do. Our DNA is from Japan, which is about a celebration of nature and inspiration for nature. So come to the store, you will see a very well-focused, and also, by the way, this is the first store in Europe where we're joined by our partner store, Theory. So this is the first time in Europe that Theory and Uniqlo are joined at the hips. But if I can give you one little gem, go downstairs to the room called the Masterpiece Room. First in the world, an amazing space where we do special repairs based on a hundreds of years old tradition called sashiko stitching, which is a way of repairing your clothes artistically. So please go there and look for that space.
That's very interesting. John CJ, it's really good of you to join us today. A special day for you and your company, Uniqlo, as you reopen, in effect, your flagship store on Regent Street in central London. John CJ there, Global Head of Creative at Uniqlo. And it's time now for my daily interview series, Money Talks. And my guest today is the makeup artist and beauty entrepreneur, Sian Della. Sian originally worked in the finance industry, but was unexpectedly made redundant. But that was the spur for her to start her own business in 2009, helped with a grant from the Prince's Trust. During the early years, Sian managed her business alone, doing everything from taking bookings to stock control and doing her work as a makeup artist. But she was rewarded and her reputation grew across the industry. In 2015, she secured a clinic at one of the most recognisable addresses in the world, number 1 Harley Street. It hasn't always been easy. Sian's juggled her work and business life with being a mum of 4, and she's never taken a day's maternity leave. Here to tell us more, how does she do it? It's Sian Della, my latest guest on Money Talks. You're very welcome here. Great to see you here on The Money. Now, I've been reading about you, and what you specialise in is semi-permanent makeup. Now, I'm a bear of little brain. I don't wear much makeup. What is semi-permanent makeup?
It's a cosmetic tattoo. So we do eyebrows, eyes and lips. So if someone's suffering from alopecia or have hair loss issues, we would create hair strokes in the brows to give them a new look.
So it doesn't come off in the shower.
So,
it sort of wears off.
Yeah.
So it's not like a tattoo, but it's stronger than makeup.
Yes, so it would last
Really
for about a
interesting.
year, and then every year they would come back for repeat treatments.
And there's a big market for that, not just I wouldn't say treat, not just on people who have certain conditions, but because they just want
to look better and to not have to wear makeup daily and not to reapply makeup daily.
Really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So you were working in finance, and it happens.
2009. Yeah.
You get laid off. What was it in you that made you think, you know what, I'm going to start a business? Did you instantly think I'm going to start a business?
I had always wanted to from such a young age, didn't really know what capacity that would work in, and the redundancy just made me think, right, this is the time to do it. So I had my brows done at the time, and so that was my light bulb moment. It was like, this is what I want to do. I'd always had an obsession with eyebrows because I didn't really have any from such a young age. In my teens, I'd tweezed them all off and was drawing them on for 10 years, like most of my clients.
Yeah.
And that just changed my life. And I just thought, that's what I want to do. And the lady that had done mine kind of inspired me, really. She had also come from a finance background. And I thought, that's great, I can do that. And I just wanted to be able to work in a role that meant that I could, once I had a family, could spend time with them.
But nothing complex happens in a straight line, does it? It must have been tough. There must have been setbacks. There must have been days when you just wanted to stay in bed, frankly.
Well, because
4 kids, businesses. It's hard running a business. You've got to meet payroll, you've got to get stock in, you've got to deal with clients who aren't always easy, particularly when they're paying for a service. Were you surprised at how hard it's been?
Very. Very. I knew it would be hard.
If you'd have known how hard it was going to be, would you have started?
Yes, because the rewards make it, I definitely would have carried on, for sure.
How important was that grant from the Prince's Trust? What did that enable you to do? I hope you don't mind me mentioning it in the introduction. It's actually a huge honour that you were granted that financial support. How did you win that, and what difference does it make?
It's made a massive difference because it allowed me to pay for things like a website in the beginning when I didn't have a huge capital, and also, as well as the financial help, there was a lot of help from them going forward. So I had a mentor, and she would help me with who to go to for marketing and where to start up, and just, a lot more than just the financial help. Was it make or break? Would you be where you are now without that Prince's Trust grant? Probably not. Wow, that's really, really important, isn't it? That's quite moving, actually. It really is. So tell us about your business now, where you're at and where you hope to go. So we are on Harley Street, which has been a great opportunity, and we are now looking at training in the semi-permanent mould, so training people to go out and do the same thing and to change lives, because literally we are changing lives. That's exactly what happened for myself. And what's it been like to be a woman running a business, not just a mum, but a woman, in a business where there are obviously lots of women clients and lots of women entrepreneurs? But tell us about the work-life balance thing and your famous characteristic that you've never actually taken a day's maternity leave. That's it. It's very hard. How do the kids feel about that? It's really tough because I am doing the treatments and also having to have the children. So it's been really run the business as well, which is why I can't actually take a maternity, because I have to be there for the clients. And when you get to a certain level, and you bring people in to try and help you, people don't really want to see other people. They want to see you. They want to, they trust in you. They've built up their trust in you, and I've been seeing them for such a long time. So it's been challenging, but I've worked around it, and I've had 4, so something's working. And I'm told by my colleagues here at GBNews that semi-permanent makeup is also becoming quite popular for men as well, not least eyebrows. So check me out, what could you do for me? So we do eyebrows and eyeliner, and so eyeliners, we had a client come in quite recently that had alopecia, so he'd lost all of his hair, he'd lost his eyebrows and also his lashes. And just creating a slight enhancement in the lash line meant that just to look at him, it took the focus off him not having lashes.
Wow.
And, you know, he went to the barbers soon after and they hadn't noticed that he'd had it done. It just looked like he had lashes.
Wow.
And that was great for him to not feel like he had.
But it's becoming more common, isn't it, for men to paint eyebrows too?
Yeah.
I mean, is that a recent thing? Apparently, Idris Elba's done it, and some other well-known celebrities.
I'd say in the last 5 years, it's become a lot more acceptable for a man to groom himself and you know, have semi-permanent makeup. And men do suffer from hair loss just as much as women. We get guys that just are in the gym constantly, and you know, they don't want to have to draw their eyebrows on and then them wash off. And this makes that.
Where do you think your business can go, Sian? You've had tremendous success. You have got a big reputation in the industry, it must be said. You've secured this really prestigious perch, if you like, in the middle of London. What's your vision for what Shandella Beauty could be?
We want to go global. So I do travel to the Middle East for treatments quite often.
Wow.
Just before the pandemic. I've got a salon in Kuwait, and I would like to secure some more locations around the Middle East.
Does it help, because you are a woman of colour, and if you're treating people in, say, the Middle East with different skin tones than you would ordinarily get here in the UK, though, of course, many people from the Middle East live here in the UK, do you think that gives women of colour more confidence for you to treat them because you kind of get it?
Yeah, and know about.
It's a huge market then, isn't it? Not just here in the UK, but across the world.
Yeah.
And is it more complicated, or is it just different?
It's just a little bit different, learning about skin tones and textures. And I think they just trust me knowing that I am a lady of colour.
And what would you say to mums watching this who are thinking, I want to start my own business, be it in the beauty space, any other business? What's your advice to them in a nutshell?
Just go for it. Absolutely do it. It's so rewarding. If you do want to work for yourself and make a difference, go for it.
Well, Sian, it's been a real pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I'm going to get my eyebrows painted anytime soon, but if I do, I'm coming to you. Shandella. Brilliant. Thank you for being my latest guest here on Money Talks. That is all we got time for today. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow because this is GB News. I'm Liam Halligan, and that was On the Money.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Mostly dry on Thursday, plenty of sunshine, but the breeze increasing over the next 24 hours or so. The reason for the settled weather at the moment, low pressure to the south of the UK, high pressure to the north, an easterly flow developing, drawing in quite a lot of dry air at the moment, but we will see changes as we move into the weekend. For Thursday afternoon, plenty of sunshine across the whole of the UK. It will be hazy at times. The easterly breeze just starting to pick up, so noticeable along some eastern coasts. Perhaps some low cloud mist and murk holding on across some eastern coast of northeast England here too. Temperatures pegged back 11, 12, 13 degrees. But come further west, temperatures rising 19, 20 Celsius possible, well above average for the time of year. Moderate UV levels too. Through the evening time, some mist and fog starts to develop in one or two spots. Low cloud moving back in off the North Sea down the east coast here, so turning murky as the night goes on. That easterly wind also starting to pick up, becoming noticeable by the end of the night. Temperatures generally into mid-single figures. Towns and cities holding up well above freezing. So a fresh start to Friday morning. A dry, bright start for many, though low cloud across some eastern areas. The southeast seeing some thicker cloud. This pushing its way westwards through the morning into the afternoon. It should break up. However, we will see showers develop here too. One or two of these could be heavy as they move into the West Country, though the Midlands northwards, plenty more sunshine to come. Some low cloud around the coast, keeping it cooler across northeast Scotland, eastern England, but elsewhere temperatures again high teens, well above average. Through the evening we should start to see the showers fade away across southwest England. Elsewhere generally dry, though notice again some low cloud moving in off the North Sea later on. And that will set us up for the weekend itself. Cloudy for many, the risk of a few showers, the best of the sunshine in the east where we'll see the highest temperatures.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust